everyone. I'm your host, Anika Zubair, and welcome back to the next episode of the Customer Success Pro podcast. I'm a customer success executive leader, award-winning CS strategist, CS coach, and customer success fanatic. I help CS leaders and CSMs build and scale world-class CS processes and teams. I'm a strong believer that customer success is not a destination, but a journey. And it can be a tough journey, but don't worry, I'm here to help. This podcast was created to help make your CS journey a little bit easier to navigate. Join me every month on this podcast where we will dive into the hottest topics in CS, the newest strategies, and the best practices in customer success so you can make your CS journey a little bit easier. Make sure you subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcast so that you can continue to learn on this CS journey that we are on together. Welcome back. Today I'm speaking with Alex Turkovic, who is the Global Director of Digital Customer Success at Flexera. Alex has over 15 years of experience in customer success leadership, professional services, and customer education. As the Global Director of Digital Customer Success at Flexera, he combines digital and scaled customer success strategies with customer education programs to ensure optimal customer lifecycle engagement and outcomes. Alex is also the host of the CX podcast, where he explores different aspects of building and maintaining world-class digital customer success experiences with guests who are in field and executing. Today, we will be chatting with Alex all about AI in customer success. There has been plenty of chat about the importance of how you should be using AI in SaaS and customer success. But how are you doing this? How can you use AI every single day as a CSM to help you save time and provide more value to your customers? That's exactly what we are going to talk about to Alex today. So stay tuned to get tips, tricks, and best practices on how you can use AI daily in customer success. Thank you for listening to this month's episode of the Customer Success Pro podcast. This is just a quick reminder that this episode is brought to you by our sponsor, CSM RevUp Academy. CSM RevUp Academy is my complete step-by-step coaching program that helps you elevate your skills and mindset to focus on driving revenue for both your customers and your company. This is a coaching program that walks you through step-by-step on how to align customer success strategies with business objectives, identify upsells and cross-sell opportunities, and foster long-term, mutually beneficial relationships with your customers. Within CSM RevUp, you will get the frameworks, strategies, and confidence you need in order to unlock revenue from your customers and hit your NRR goals, and yes, ultimately land your next promotion. Doors will open for CSM RevUp Academy enrollment on September 18th, 2024. It will be your last chance to enroll for this coaching program for this year. If you could use a little extra help with your CS strategy or help hitting your revenue goals this year, make sure you are on the wait list because the people that go through CSM RevUp Academy will get the support, playbooks, and strategies they need in order to succeed at revenue and customer success. Get on the wait list by going to thecustomersuccesspro.com/CSM-RevUp-Academy or by checking out the link in the show notes of this podcast. So welcome, Alex, to the podcast. I am so very excited to have you on this podcast with us today. But before we get into probably the hottest topic in customer success of the year, can you please tell my listeners a little bit more about yourself, how you started at Flexera, what your role is, what are you up to? Give us your elevator pitch.
Sure. Well, first off, thank you for having me. It's awesome to be here. I've been a fan of yours for a while and the show, and it was awesome having you on my show, and now I get to be on your show, so that's super cool. Alex Turkovic. I've been in post-sale, kind of education and post-sale for almost 2 decades. It's kind of scary to think about, but last few years, really, I've been just laser focused on digital customer success specifically. So that's been my role at Snow Software, now of Flexera, because there was an acquisition that happened there. Super fun. And I've been host of the Digital CX podcast for year and a half, year and change. And that's been just super fun talking to, in various industry leaders such as yourself about digital, and by extension, that has naturally um, kind of extended into topic of today, which is really around artificial intelligence. But yeah, that's been my focus for the last 4 or 5 years, is just digital, digital, digital.
Yeah, love it. I love it. You push out so much digital CX content. I think it's critical in the world that we find ourselves in, where everyone's just trying to do more, scale more, do everything and anything in customer success when we can't always do it all. So
Yeah,
I do love all the content, especially the podcast that you're putting out there. And it was an honor to be on your show. So it's really exciting to have you on this one now.
for sure.
But give us a bigger picture understanding about your team, about Flexera. What are the types of customers you're dealing with? What are is it all digital customer success that you're looking after? Give us a little bit of a bigger picture here.
Yeah. So we look after, okay, I hate to say that digital is a segment, because we all collectively have been saying, oh, digital is not a segment, but it's a strategy. But at the end of the day, there is still a segmentation element of digital, right? So I do look over global digital CS, which means inherently we do provide some CS coverage for the 6,000-7,000 accounts roughly that don't have an assigned CSM. So it's a pretty big account set. And so we do that by way of a team that we've kind of split into two. We have a customer facing team. A lot of people would call it a scaled team or a digital CS team or whatever. But I have a team of folks that are customer facing, that reach out to customers at certain times, whether it be time based or whether it be off of certain triggers or events that happen along the customer's journey. They also do things like respond to survey responses, because I'm a massive advocate for, if you put out a survey, you better respond when somebody submits a survey response. Um,
Definitely.
so that's kind of like the customer facing side. And then I've got the programs team, which are focused literally on building and testing and iterating upon all of the digital motions that we have in place or want to put in place. So that's, program manager and an analyst to look after data hygiene and all those kinds of fun little logistics things. You could say, really, I mean, we don't have a CS ops function. So we've been kind of taking on a big portion of what you might call CS ops as part of that function as well.
Awesome. And I think that you just mentioned you really started to focus on digital customer success in your personal brand and everything you put out on LinkedIn and the podcast about a year and a half ago. Is that when you also made the shift professionally, or what really inspired you to start in digital customer success, or really shift kind of your focus? Was it the role, the company? Where did this all come from?
Yeah, a great question. So I spent a lot of time in professional services and onboarding and just kind of post sale leadership. And in all of those roles, I always looked for ways that we could automate to make things easier. My goal has kind of always been to make sure that the people we have on the team are operating efficiently, and that they're engaging in conversations where it really drives value versus just like doing the mundane things over and over again, right? So I've always kind of had this eye towards automation. And about 3.5, 4 years ago, this opportunity came up at Snow Software to build their digital CS function. And so I jumped at the chance. I jumped in with both feet and started building a team and started building processes and really injecting digital CS into a roughly 20-year-old company already that had been very used to operating enterprise level one-on-one kind of high touch relationships. And so interjecting some of that stuff into the business was a really valuable experience, and really made me realize that, hey, this is an intersection of all the things that you love about post sale, because I'm massively into enablement and education and those kinds of things. I love figuring out how systems work together and data and all that kind of stuff. So it was just a perfect marriage. And at some point, I was having these conversations with other leaders around around the CS industry about this stuff because, for self-education purposes. And I was like, why am I not recording this stuff? And why am I not putting it out there? And so that just kind of organically led to, hey, let's start a podcast. And, one thing led to another. And here I am year and a half later and 65 episodes later. So
I love it. I love it. I still remember when you put out your first episode, and I was like, that's cool. Way to niche down in customer success. There's tons of podcasts and content out there. So I absolutely love that you went in that direction. But from the outside, it looks like you've definitely nailed a niche. And when it comes to digital CX, you've ended up in a career trajectory where you're director of customer success. I really love asking all my guests, like, what is next in your CS career? What's your next dream or ambition or the next step really for you now that you've kind of nailed this part of customer success, both personally but also professionally?
that's a great question, and I wish I knew the answer. No, seriously though, like I've really gotten a lot of value and gratification, satisfaction. I was trying to pick my words.
Gratification. That's a new
Gratification.
word. We're going to coin that.
Yeah, we're gonna go with that. Um, just helping other leaders and organizations, increase their digital maturity. Right. That's been over the last year and a half. That has probably been like the number one source of personal fulfillment, is just helping other organizations do that. And so I think what the future looks like for me over the next few years is continuing to help organizations evolve that way. Probably through some consultancy, but also, whether it be W-2 or independently as a consultant. That's going to be the focus. I have consciously, as part of my career, I wanted to collect experiences. I didn't want to just niche down into one area, which is why I spent a lot of time in professional services and onboarding and education and those kinds of things. And so, for me, ultimately, whether that turns into, C-level, chief operating officer, chief customer officer kind of stuff, or whether I continue down that path of building the independent that independent consultancy remains to be seen. But that's kind of the
Ooh, but
crossroads.
that's exciting though. I feel like that's a lot of options. And I love seeing a lot of CS leaders kind of branch out. You just mentioned like chief operating officer as well as chief customer officer. I think that there's a lot of directions customer success is going into the future. And it's really cool to see a lot of what I call my LinkedIn friends explore different avenues, but also take on different,
Sure.
I guess, challenges and really start to sharpen their skill set when it comes to new things within customer success, whether it's consultancy, whether it's niching down into a specific vertical, which I, like yourself, have done a million different things. I feel like
Right.
I'm a I feel like I definitely have it niche, but it's really cool to see customer success evolve over the last few years and also looking into the future, like what it can mean for a CS professional as next step. So thanks for sharing that. Even though it's not exact the direction, I really love hearing everyone's personal next steps.
Yeah, I started calling myself a professional mutt, but that didn't really go over too well. So I'm just going with, whatever.
No, but I mean, I mean, that's a dog. Who doesn't love
Yeah.
dogs? I'm
Yeah.
like, you could spin it in a positive way.
I could. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, listen, I love the backstory, but I think we should get into our topic, which I know you've discussed on your podcast, where you've talked about like an AI primer episode. And for anyone listening, I'll make sure to link it down in the show notes if you are interested in listening to that episode Alex has done. But AI has become the hottest, most talked about topic in SaaS in general in the world, and now specifically in customer success. I think a lot of CS professionals know they should be using AI in their CS strategy, but it's still at a loss of how we should do it. How does it play a role in your day to day? And that is exactly what I want to talk to you about today, Alex, is really the practical use of AI every single day in customer success. So just to warm ourselves up into this topic, can you just give us an overview of like how you used AI in customer success or how you started to use it in your day to day, either in operations and customer success? Just give us a starting point here of what you're using AI for.
Yeah, it was brute force. I mean, look, I'm in my mid 40s. And the if when you're in your 40s or 50s, it doesn't, adopting new technology, I don't think is the first go-to. Like, you just kind of want to operate as you have been operating. And so for me, it was really like a matter of, ripping the band-aid off and just trying to pull AI into my everyday work stream, no matter kind of what I was doing. And I can give you some tactical examples. First off, I've just been trying to educate myself as much as possible on what is currently happening in artificial intelligence, just because I feel like, with the podcast, I have a little bit of a, it's part of the job description to stay on top of this stuff, right, and to share some of those findings and whatnot. But my first stop was just, ChatGPT, the pro license, and using it on an almost daily basis. In fact, I've started recently using it on my walks, which doesn't
Ooh,
doesn't
how
sound
are you using it while walking?
right. So this all came about very recently because these things iterate so quickly. So Chat or OpenAI came out with GPT 4.0, which on the mobile app allows you to literally have a conversation with it. Um, and so I'll go on walks, and if I'm stuck on something, either professionally or in my business or whatever it may be, um, I'll have a conversation with it about what it is I'm stuck on, and describe all the different details of why I'm stuck on it, and it'll help me unstick things. So a lot of times, a 10-15 minute conversation with ChatGPT will kind of open up my eyes to some things that I may have been missing or thinking about in the wrong way. And then when I get back to my computer or whatever, I'll have the entire transcript of that whole chat, and I'll just plug and play. I've used it to create some outlines of shows and kind of draft articles, and like really as a personal assistant, almost like. And it does make me look a little bit crazy. I guess not. I mean, it just looks like I'm on the
Everyone's
phone.
talking to their phones these days. That doesn't sound crazy at
I
all.
guess not, but I literally use it that way on a daily basis as kind of my personal companion to just help me think through things and get things done. And so personally, that has really helped me. I would say the other thing I would add is, from more of a CS specific angle, I use Perplexity a ton, for research, because it's essentially, I've almost replaced Google, quite frankly, with Perplexity in terms of my searching, because it is they call themselves a research engine, which is true. I mean, it does, give you a nice summary of whatever it is you're searching for, but then also gives you the sources. And I know Google's trying to do that a little bit, but it's still, I mean, Google searches feel cumbersome in comparison. So I'll do account research, for instance. A lot of times when I'm, engaging with an account I didn't know before or don't have any context about, I'll do a quick Perplexity search on that company and try to get, the history and the financials and who the board is and who the investors are and all that kind of stuff. And a lot of times I find myself almost being more educated about that particular company than my points of contact there are. So I use it for interesting things like that, just again, that kind of co-pilot mentality is what I take.
I love that. There's so much in there that I can just ask so many follow-up questions to, but I have never thought about talking to
Yeah.
ChatGPT while walking. I definitely have like a list of prompts and a list of like copy paste of things that I always ask AI to do for me or help me out. Like you said, researching customer things, or I really have replaced Google with ChatGPT. And I thought I was cool with the short, but like a short key on my keyboard to talk to ChatGPT, because now there's like a Mac app as well for it. So I use that. But you've just given me a great new idea about talking to my phone and basically having a conversation with AI, which is could be quite scary for a lot of people who are intimidated by it.
Yeah, I mean, the comparisons, when that first released, everybody was making the comparison to Her, the movie, and for the right reason, because it is basically that experience. It's really bizarre, and that what they've done in terms of the nuances of tone of voice and things like that. It gets sarcasm, for instance, which just blows my mind. And so, it is very bizarre. It's a bizarre experience, and it takes some getting used to. But once you're in there, it's pretty neat.
Definitely. I think it's really cool that we're living out all of these future movies that we watch. Like, if you think like Her or I, Robot or like any of these things that I think are like these dystopian future about like robots running our world. I sometimes think like it's kind of cool that we get to actually try this. I know it's intimidating and scary, but hopefully everyone listening to this podcast, you get some ideas to actually take back and apply and realize that these are things that people are using every single day in customer success, and it's really helping us open even more avenues of success for our companies and our customers and for ourselves personally, which I think is
Yeah.
the big part of AI that's probably not being unlocked by most people. And you mentioned that you had to go through kind of brute force, Alex, to basically start using it, which is something you did personally. But what about with your team? I know you're using it within Flexera. I know you guys are starting to use it a lot more in your digital strategies as well. How did you motivate CSMs or your team to actually start integrating AI into their day to day?
Yeah, I mean, part of it is it's an ongoing thing, right? Some are using it actively, some aren't at all, and that's kind of personal preference. Obviously, I just share my experiences and my own personal experiences and the benefits that I get from it with the team on a regular basis, which just naturally kind of builds curiosity and whatnot. The other element of AI is that all these companies, these vendors that we're using are starting to integrate AI in some more, some less meaningful ways into various platforms. And so I think part of using it is also just taking advantage of all the platforms that are building AI copilot and tools into their ecosystems as well. I think it's for me what it comes down to is just being comfortable with the technology. I listen to Gary Vaynerchuk quite a bit, and one of the things that he has always kind of harped on, specific to social media, but it applies to AI, is that you may not be interested in using TikTok, you may not be interested in whatever, but if you learn how to use it and if you learn how to post on it, guess what? The next platform that's coming is going to be based on best practices that TikTok was using, right? And I think the same thing applies for artificial intelligence. Right now is the time to start playing and to explore and to break stuff using AI and to just really get comfortable with prompting and prompting with high quality and really flexing those muscles, because all of this is the way it's going, whether we like it or not. And so by building that kind of that knowledge base and that muscle now will just help you going forward. And this, I think this is especially true for job seekers at the moment. Like, if there's a lot of folks on the market, and if you can spend some time now to really get deep into artificial intelligence, guarantee you that's going to look great on your resume. So
But also, it's gonna be such an edge for you as a CSM or a CS pro or leader coming in, having AI, like, skill set or just any sort of ideas on how to implement AI into a customer success strategy or an overall business growth strategy is just that is a skill that I think any employer would wanna see and hear about. So I think it's beneficial, like you said, to get on the education bus or whatever you wanna call it and really understand how AI can help you every single day and not shy away from it. And I think most CS professionals aren't shying away from tools or technology. We all live in technology where we literally work as professionals trying to enable our customers to use our products. So why shouldn't we start using a product or tool that's mostly free? That's the great part too.
yeah,
Yes, you
right.
can pay for ChatGPT, but most of the AI tools out there are free. And like I just wanted to dive in a little bit deeper into you mentioned a few tools already that you're using. Are there any other common AI tools or apps or platforms that you're using daily, and how are you using them to help yourself as a busy CS pro?
Yeah, I mentioned Perplexity. That I'm just using the snot out of Perplexity. I think it does a really good job of just summarizing the internet. you know, whereas ChatGPT kind of doesn't do, it's still a little bit limited in terms of that. Another tool that I have grown really fond of is well, two of them actually. Gamma is quite known for building PowerPoint decks.
Yeah.
um, so that's been really cool, because if I want to go build a, I don't know, a business case or a proposal or a pitch deck or something like that, like whatever it is I want to build, I'll spend 2 or 3 minutes coming up with a really solid prompt, and it'll spit out a 20-page deck that gives me probably 80% of what I need in terms of structure and verbiage and basics, to really build out a solid PowerPoint deck that probably would have taken me days otherwise. So that's one. There's others that I'm drawing a blank on, but I'm sure I'll get to them at some point during this
That's all good.
conversation.
All good. I think that some of the tools you're just mentioning, like, first of all, if you're a CS pro that's like struggling time-wise, I know I use AI all the time from like a let me speed up a process, whether it's research about a customer, but you just mentioned Gamma, which is a great tool to help you speed up making slides. I know we make so many slides in customer success. Why not have some other tool make it visually more appealing
Yeah.
or attractive to you? Because listen, I'm not a designer here. I don't know how to design slides. I can put something together, but I'm sure AI can do it better for me.
Yeah.
And the same thing goes for managing my calendar, or again, responding back to customers, or creating templates with how I engage with customers. All of these are just, again, prompts, things you start using every single day as a CS professional. And I think you mentioned it earlier. It's really how you prompt these tools and how you're able to engage with AI
Yep.
that really makes a difference day to day. And like, I just wanted to ask, are there any prompts that you're using? How do you save your prompts? How do you even go about creating a prompt? Maybe explaining that might be a good place to start.
Sure. There is, I used to keep a kind of a doc of saved prompts, and sometimes I still reference it. But now with ChatGPT, you can actually um, save some critical information into ChatGPT itself so that it can reference it in the future. So I'll give you a practical example. Uh, I used to ask ChatGPT all the time to use a specific tone of voice that kind of, I basically figured out what my tone of voice was in relation to ChatGPT by feeding it like a bunch of my articles and transcripts and things like that, and it gave me back like these are the parameters you would use to prompt me, to sound like you. Um, and so I used to copy and paste that into like every single one of my prompts. But now I've just asked ChatGPT to save that out for me, right? So you have this, you can literally tell it commit this to memory, and it'll commit these kinds of things like, tone of voice, or, other bits of context about who you are, who you work for, what you do, what your field of expertise is, and those kinds of things into it, so that you don't have to include that in your prompting every time. So that's that's kind of hot tip number one. The other thing that I use all the time, and I've talked about a lot, is called the Risen framework, RISEN, which is a great framework for producing really detailed prompts. And that's the key, right? Asking ChatGPT to create an article about, I don't know, electric guitars, that's going to get you one result, right? But
And a very basic result
a
at that.
very basic result is not going to be anything that you want. And a lot of people stop there. They're like, okay, the novelty of it, right? Write me an article about electric guitars. Okay, that's great. It's not really, relevant or great or whatever. So I'm just going to go and write it myself. But with frameworks like Risen, there's a few others out there as well. You can give GPT the details that it needs to create a high quality, bit of work that is aligned with what your expectations are, right? So Risen, of course, it's an acronym. R stands for role. So you're going to literally tell it like what is the role you want it to assume. So, in the case of the electric guitar, you might say your role is to play an expert in musical instruments. You've been in music for a couple of decades, and you know everything about specifically instruments used in whatever. You can get really like nitty gritty with what the role it is you want it to play, but that's key because it may sound kind of weird to do that, but what it does is it tells the model to ignore everything else that it knows, which
Yep.
is huge. By ignoring all this other stuff, you can get it to focus in and not feed you with a bunch of weird stuff. The next, so R, and then instruction is I. That's where you're telling it, okay, I want you to write me this article and those kinds of things. Then you tell it steps. You literally, so that's S. You literally tell it, okay, I want an intro paragraph. I want 3 bullet points and subheadings. A closing whatever and a call to action. Like you can tell it exactly how you want it structured. You Then the E is the end goal. So whether you want to drive like website conversions, whether you just want to be informative, whether you want to, lead to something else, you can literally tell it what is the goal of this piece. And then lastly, N is narrowing, which I think is also critical. You want to tell it not to like do certain things, like make stuff up, for instance, because ChatGPT is great at making stuff up if it doesn't know, right? And so you want to
AI
narrow it
isn't
down.
always the answer.
It isn't always the answer. So you want to narrow it down to like, being very, very specific and only give you factual information that's related to this one thing. So that's a quick and dirty run through of Risen, which I use all the time. And it served me quite well.
Definitely. I think that having a prompt like that and then making sure you are telling the tool what to do, because I think a lot of people, like you said, use the novelty of ChatGPT, like write me a poem about electric guitars or something like, the fun stuff that we originally did when we started using AI a little over a year ago now. But like you said, it is super powerful when you tell it to do something very specific. If you think about even any sort of assistant, we kept referring back to it being your assistant really. Your assistant's only going to know what to do when you tell your assistant exactly what to do. And again, AI is only as smart as the prompts you put into it. And I think that that is just, there's one thing anyone takes away from this episode, I would say just get really, really comfortable with what you're prompting it to do. Like, really work out, much like Alex already said, tone of voice. What is it you want it to do? Is it an article? Is it short form? Is it an email? Also, formality. Also, even like, for example, I use British English versus American English, for example. Like, get as specific as you can with your prompts because I think those little bits are what makes AI easier for you down the line. If you're just using very generic prompts, you're gonna get very generic answers, and then you're gonna give up on using it because it just sounds like a robot because you're not telling it to assume a role, like you said, or not lie or whatever else you need to prompt it to do. So
Yeah, exactly.
definitely. So we talked a little bit about prompts. We talked a little bit how you personally use AI. Let's talk about how AI can be used to streamline customer success processes, specifically digital, because I think a lot of people listening, a lot of people that know you know that you work in scaled or digital customer success. And I can see how the not the easiest, but probably the first place AI comes into customer success is in digital or scaled models because it's like, cool, it's a tech touch model. Let's get something tech to help us out. Has there been some sort of strategy or process you've put in place that you used AI to do so?
Yeah, it's a tough one for us because the one thing that we have been struggling with that I've probably learned the most from over the last year or so is just data quality. You know, um, there's a lot of promise in artificial intelligence and using it, and there's any number of chatbots out there, and there's cool tools that'll analyze your support ticket volume and suggest knowledge base articles and like all that kind of stuff, right? The problem with it is like if you plop it on top of some some kind of ratty or poor data, you're going to get poor results out of it, just like anything, right? And so, um, probably the number one thing that I've learned, is that, you really want to make sure that whatever you're training your GPT or your AI tooling on, is built on a solid foundation of solid data that is right and is accurate, and it doesn't have to be like squeaky clean, because I've never seen a squeaky clean
Yeah,
customer
I was
data
about to
set.
say, when is that ever the
That
case?
doesn't exist, right? That doesn't exist. But there needs to be a kind of a baseline level there. One example, of in fact, how it didn't quite work well for us is, the CSP we're using has, a lovely account summary feature that gives us like a nice run through of not only who the company is and what they're all about and what their industry is and those kinds of things, but then it also runs through, okay, this is their history with you as an account, these are the recent updates and tickets and sentiments and those kinds of things, and it's a lovely thing. But invariably, if it's fed off of data that doesn't quite hit it on the accuracy perspective, then it becomes just another thing that people start questioning. And so that's the big thing to kind of avoid when you're looking at AI tooling, and wanting to implement these things, is like, are you ready for that, and are you ready to put in the effort that it takes to get it up and running? One brilliant thing that, I think everyone who's exploring a customer facing chatbot should do is to test it internally first. And I've heard I've heard several CS professionals that either I've had on the show or had conversations with, and something that we're doing right now is like, if you're implementing this chatbot based on your, and it's trained on your knowledge base and your community and your support and all that kind of stuff, test it internally with your internal team members and use it as an internal tool for people to get answers quickly to customer questions and those kinds of things, because that's how you're going to find out if it's directionally correct or if it's not, and what you need to do to fix it before you open it up to the masses and have it be a kind of a publicly available thing. So I don't know if that answered your question, but that's where my
It
mind went.
did.
So
I feel like you gave some advice in there, which is actually my next question, but you definitely summarized about clean data, or as clean as you can get it, because that's always tricky in any organization. And then you also said like testing internally before you go externally. Is there any other advice you would give? I think a lot of people listening to this episode are probably thinking, how can we start implementing AI into our daily workflows? Anything else? Any pieces of advice, or maybe any no-goes with AI in their workflow?
Well, the big no-go is if you are working with, kind of publicly surfaced models, do not feed it any kind of proprietary information. Please, please, please,
Yep.
please, please. Because basically you're giving your competitors a bunch of proprietary information. That said, we made a very conscious effort early on, like a year or so ago, to actually, feed Chat GPT a bunch of our kind of openly available information, and train it on who we were as a company and those kinds of things, which is a very interesting thing to think about, because anything you put in there, if it's not within your kind of company environment, it's going to go, the model's going to be trained on it, right?
Yep. Yep.
So I think that's probably the big no go, or at least go verify that, whatever it is you're interacting with. I mean, if you're using like yeah, Microsoft Copilot or whatever it is, like you're probably okay because it's in your instance of Microsoft 365 or whatever. So just touch base with your IT department and make sure that whatever it is you're doing, is either secure or not secure, and see what their AI policies are. Aside from that, though, my I mean, look, my biggest advice, and it goes back to what I was talking about earlier, is just start using it, integrate it into everything you're doing. Whether it's, drafting newsletters, drafting articles, drafting emails, and those kinds of things. I'm not telling you to like draft it, copy and paste it, and stick it in your inbox or stick it in your, into your Outlook to send to your customers. But start using it in a way that you can, have it basically consolidate a bunch of information for you that you would have otherwise gone and had to search for in various different places, pulling that into one place and then creating these kind of, whether it be email templates or whatever, out there for you, so that then you can spend, instead of spending half an hour creating an email, you can spend 5 minutes polishing what the output was.
Yeah. I also think that if I look back at it, I would love to have started to use it earlier to validate or to even like give me a cleanup of my ideas, I should
Yeah,
say. Like if
totally.
you're building a customer health score or you're thinking of building a digital success program or something that you're working on, just ask it to give you ideas or ask it to refine your idea. I think I wish I started doing that sooner because I used it for all the fun things like we talked about earlier. I was like, let's make a funny joke about customer success with AI or something. And I really wish I started to use it sooner in more practical settings. I wish I started to use prompts more or at least get better at prompting it as well. I mean, much like everything else in life, I wish I started so many things sooner as well. And like if there's one thing I would say is like you should really be using it every day. And I hope this episode gives you everyone that wake up call of like you should be using AI somewhat in some way every day. And I guess that kind of just leads me on to the final piece that I wanted to ask you, which is like, is there, if you look back at your AI journey and how you've been using it, is there anything you wish you did sooner, or is there anything that you wish you would have learned faster? What is it that you'd like to leave our listeners with?
I mean, I wish that I had, in retrospect, I wish I had gotten in, just like you said, gotten in there sooner and started using it sooner, because I was a little bit behind the eight ball, and then it was a bunch of cramming to get me there. One thing that has helped me tremendously is there's one uh, daily live stream slash podcast that I actually listen to quite frequently. I don't listen to it daily. Who has time for that? But um,
I was about to say, whoa, what a
yeah,
commitment.
but it's called Everyday AI, and so I'll listen to it quite frequently, probably 2-3 times a week. And the host Jordan and his team basically summarize what's happening with AI on a regular basis. They have a lot of amazing guests from like Microsoft and Google and Amazon on regularly to talk about what it is they're doing as well. But then they'll give you practical advice. So if you look back at their show, there are episodes that are related to like practical advice on how you can just go use it for XYZ or incorporate it into your daily, work life. That's been instrumental. And there's a couple other creators out there, but that one in particular is one I pay attention to a lot to keep me current.
Thank you for that suggestion. I also have another suggestion as well, which is Superhuman. It's an AI newsletter that comes out every few days, and he just has the top notch what's happening in AI, what is next in AI, prompts that you can copy, just
Cool.
like ins and outs of AI in general. And I can't say I read every newsletter because it's every other day. I think he sends something out, which is quite a lot, but I have things saved. I try to get through it all, but yeah, there's just tons out there. And thanks so much for your suggestions, Alex. I know that everyone listening probably has been taking tons of notes, and we could probably keep talking for ages, but
Dude,
I
we
do
could
need
keep
to
going.
wrap us up.
Yeah.
And I loved having you on the show, but are you ready for the quick fire questions where I challenge my listeners and my guest to try to answer this next few questions in a sentence or less? Are you ready?
Yes, I think.
Okay.
I don't know.
Okay. Everyone struggles if that helps you out. But my first question for you is if you could predict the future, what do you think CS will focus on next year?
2025, Next year. Gosh, is it okay, that's 2025. Um, look, I mean, I don't wanna sound like a broken record, but it's this stuff. Like, it's incorporating these technologies into, like, our everyday activities because this stuff is developing rapidly. The cost of development is plummeting, and so we're gonna see more and more and more apps filling more and more use cases, and so it's gonna be I think 2025 is the year to, like, wrangle it all into, "Okay, this is what we need to go do with this stuff."
Awesome. I think that was more than a sentence, but let's see if we can get
Sorry,
better at the
sorry.
next few ones. So my next question is, which app or software do you use every day, every week on your phone or laptop, and why? I think I know the answer, but let's see what it is.
I mean, Perplexity, that's it, it's like it's become my Google, and, enough said.
Not sponsored by Perplexity, but I
Not
feel like
sponsored at all. I should actually talk to them about podcast sponsorships because
you
I talk
should,
about them a
you
lot.
should, you should. You love them. Cool. Next question is, if you could change one thing about customer success, what would it be?
The QBR.
Ooh, that's controversial.
Is it though? I mean, everybody talks about how much they hate it, and like, I don't know an executive who really wants to sit on the QBR, especially if you're a low value vendor. Like, if you're not part of
Yeah,
a huge part of the budget, then don't bother. Like, engage in meaningful ways with like meaningful information instead of just like an hour meeting that has no value.
yeah. I can see where you're coming from on that. I have the opposite opinion because I have like super high touch enterprise customers, so very
Sure,
different.
that's that's fine.
But yeah, I can see where it's definitely outdated and not a good use of time. So great answer. And my last question that I love asking everyone is, who should be my next podcast guest?
I should have prepped for this, but I didn't. Um, Sarah Roberts.
Ooh, Sarah's great.
Sarah's awesome. I love
Sarah's
Sarah.
awesome.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
love her too. Well, Sarah, if you're listening, I'd love to chat to you. But thank you so much, Alex, for your time and your expertise and all your insights. I absolutely loved having this conversation with you. If our listeners want to learn more or chat to you further, or maybe have a follow-up question, what is the best way to get a hold of you?
LinkedIn is great, but you can also go to digitalcustomersuccess.com.
Awesome. I'll make sure to link everything down in the show notes. Thanks again, Alex.
Thank you. It's awesome. Appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to the Customer Success Pro podcast today. I hope you learned something new to take back to your team and your company. If you enjoyed today's episode, please can you take 1 minute to give me a positive review on Apple Podcasts? It takes a lot of time and energy to create an episode, and I want to continue to create more for you. But it would be great to know that you are enjoying these episodes. Also, do not forget to subscribe to this podcast on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you listen to your podcast, as I release a new podcast every month. And if you have any topics that you would like me to discuss in the future, or you would like to be a guest on this podcast, please feel free to reach out. All my contact details are in the show notes. And if you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to share it, because sharing is caring. Thanks again for listening, and tune in next time for more on customer success. Cheers to your CS journey, and catch you next time.